All right. How's it going, man? It's wild smile. Holy crap.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, well, technically you're having me, but I
It's a little bit of back and forth
yeah,
to keep it from going
well,
crass.
I'm from the College Republicans at the University of Texas at El Paso, and I'm so glad you said yes. I'm still a little confused as to why you said yes, but
I'm always
thank
down to make time to talk to people, man.
yeah, it's awesome of you. And before we started recording this, you were talking about an entire generation raised by the media and by television. I actually think it goes back further because if you look at the '70s in scholarship, there was already people like John Rawls and Will Kimlicka. Well, Will Kimlicka comes a little bit later, but John Rawls and Robert Paul Wolff, I think, and they were already saying like, oh, people need to be given redistributed wealth so that they could live properly and all this stuff. And even John Rawls, who believed in redistribution of wealth, was already being hounded for not being illiberal enough.
Mm.
So I think this problem goes back way further. But I
Oh,
mean, what
definitely.
are your thoughts on this?
Well, if we really, I think the biggest root would be the Frankfurt School. I'm assuming you've heard of the Frankfurt School scholars like Horkheimer, Adorno.
Yeah,
Um, they, to just name a few, they believe the only way to institute change into society was to force agitation onto the public so that their outrage would cause them to bring down the system so that they could usher in the socialist utopia that they dreamt of. These men were very clear about their motives. And I think, and if I remember correctly, they also had a very clear objective of taking over the entertainment industry, the media in general, like the news media, and educational institutions. And if you look at the world today, it definitely seems all three of them have been compromised by radical socialists, to put it
yeah,
simply.
and I think one of the worst products to come out of this is something like critical theory.
Absolutely.
I mean, I took a class on that because everybody's going to probably hound me for this, but I'm an English major, and I took a critical theory class, and oh my god, I mean, within 2 days, there's no more meaningful discussion. It all like slows down to a crawl, and everyone sure sounds smart, using their postmodernist vocabulary and vernacular, but there's really nothing of value that's being said.
Mm-hmm.
It's all why is this dichotomy wrong? Why should we value this more than this? And it was just awful. I mean, we watched Pee Wee Herman in there. I was like, how am I going to a public university and this is happening?
Just goes to show what they think of the intelligence level of adults or young adults.
Yeah,
But that's
and
the thing with socialism, or at least critical theory. It's designed to tear down, never to build.
yeah, and it's so weird because I had watched that Yuri Bezmenov interview
Oh, absolutely.
um, right before I got into that class, and well, everybody knows the infamous one in '84, but um, he was talking about the destabilization of the intellectual class,
Mm-hmm.
and it seriously sounded like that was happening, but in real time.
Yes.
And
Ideological subversion.
yeah, and I hate the notion of the concept of relevant truth versus universal truth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I mean, if I punch you in the face, is it my truth that it happened, or is it like universally did that actually happen? Like,
Right. Well, I
it's
forget which philosopher said it, but "truth is a public park," I think is that what he said, and I'm not sure I agree 100% with that. But the way I see it, truth is this unobtainable thing that all of us are trying to get to, and the only way we can get to it or get even close to trying to get to it is by sharing our perspectives, because we're all looking at truth from a different perspective, and it's multidimensional.
yeah, and it's just so awful the way statistics can be skewed in a certain way, and so
Mm-hmm.
people go, well, you have your facts and I have mine. And no, there's certain ways to look at this honestly, And there's certain ways to look at this dishonestly, like the whole, well, most Muslims are peaceful, and it's like, well, yeah, but if I got a pie chart of all the religions combined, other than Islam and their terrorist activities versus Islam, it's going to be a pretty messed up looking graph.
Right. What was it? I believe Dave Rubin even said, he tweeted out, and him being a classic liberal, he was labeled alt-right after this. He said, what was it? Islamophobia doesn't exist because you can't be phobic of something that is rational, a rational fear. And since he is a gay man, he is very, very reasonably terrified of Islam, because imagine if that stuff was over here, he'd be finding himself getting thrown off a damn rooftop. Maybe not by a moderate Muslim, but guess what? We aren't just getting their moderate Muslims, we're also getting the people that want to throw gay people off of rooftops.
Yeah, and I think that's really awful that I think it was last year when they were saying, all right, you know what, gay men are no longer oppressed. They're no longer an oppressed minority. I think it was white gay men.
Yeah, specifically the ones with privilege still.
Yeah. That comes from the multiculturalist scholars. Mm-hmm. I've been reading probably the past 6 weeks, just 4 to 6 hours a day, just reading their journals, and they came up with the concept of privilege and oppression. And if you read Iris Marion Young's 5 Faces of Oppression, white people, by her standards, are oppressed through cultural imperialism, in case anybody wants to look that up. So, yeah, you do have an oppression card, just letting you know if you're white.
I'll factor that in there for the sarcastic critical theory when I have to implement it.
Yeah, it's just like their gender is a social construct, and therefore should not be adhered to. So then it's like, well, so is your made up gender, so I don't have to respect it either. And then that makes them all pissed off, and then you have to go 20 minutes of getting yelled at by 12 feminists. Like, I'm paying to get yelled at, basically.
It's fun though.
It is fun, I gotta say. When grown ass adults are just red in the face with fury, and they know they can't do anything, to physically hurt you, but they try to intimidate you, and it just makes you laugh more, because if you run 10 yards one way, half of them are going to be out of breath.
Yeah. Well, you can pop their critical theory bubble with just why. All you have to do is ask them to continue and expand. And they'll typically fall into soft racism, which is what do they call it, the soft bigotry of low expectations. Yeah. They'll typically fall into that. Well, they'll be like, well, ID restrictions for voting, that's racist. And you go like, well, why is that racist? Well, because black people don't have access to getting an ID. And you look at them like dead face and like, did you just say that black people can't afford to walk down to the DMV and buy a fucking ID card like the rest of us? Because I guarantee you they need it for every other thing they do in life, and I'm willing to bet that they're individuals who are just as capable as anyone else, as far as I can tell.
I love that video where the guy's like, I think he's in downtown New York, or he's in the Bronx or something.
Waters. I know who you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, so do you have an ID? And they're like, yes.
Obviously.
DMV is? They're like, yes. It's like, well, these people don't think you do. And he shows them a video. They're like, oh my God. I hope that red pilled them, but probably not.
It opened their eyes. You know who really opened my eyes, though? It was another black man called Big Joe. It was during the Not My President protest, or maybe it was the Women's March. It was the Women's March, I think. This guy named Big Joe. And he just goes out there talking about Planned Parenthood and just a bunch of stuff. And he's yelling at the protesters like, look, you guys are going to provoke the government into acting. And when they act, they're going to take these rights from you that you claim are taken from you right now. Yeah. It's like, you're going to cause this to happen, and you're only yourselves to blame. And there's people yelling at him, but he's this big black dude. So his voice just carries over all of them, so you can't even hear him. It's great. It's one of my favorite video clips on the internet.
I just want to point out that he never once got on his bike, if that's the one that I'm thinking of.
I think you're right, too. I think I remember him standing on his bike.
Yeah, he didn't have an escape plan. He was like, this thing will break if I get on it. But that's a big man. Before we get into more shit flinging,
because
I've got to ask you some of the real questions now. So you seem to have your finger on the pulse and everything, because you're putting out a ton of videos every week, and you're covering all the crazy things that are happening. And I just got to ask you, do you think BLM is still relevant as a social movement?
No. My perspective is that they were created to generate awareness. They've become the scapegoat of the results of cultural Marxism over the past few years. I find it no coincidence that Black Lives Matter stopped and Antifa started, and I personally feel that the two are somehow linked, but really I only have my intuition to go on that. But most protest activities, whatever you want to call them, they would be attributed to Black Lives Matter, whatever you want to call them. They are now taken under the mantle of liberalism in general. Black Lives Matter had their influence. They made it clear that they thought Black Americans' lives mattered, and then they fucked off after, of course, blocking a few highways, preventing a few emergency vehicles from reaching their desired destinations, etc. And all of this to generate awareness that Black Lives mattered, which apparently took these protesters until just a few years ago to realize.
Yeah, and I think what the strangest thing about Black Lives Matter is the thing that killed them, wasn't that their whole movement was based on a lie, but it was the blocking the highways and blocking roads, which I think Antifa is still pretty fond of doing. And it's just, who would have thought that just pissing off the average everyday person just trying to get to work was going to kill the movement from the inside?
You know what was the signifier for me that the movement was dead is when they attack people who say all lives matter. Because that's it's them saying, of course Black Lives Matter, because all lives matter. That's what All Lives Matter is saying. But they take it as, how dare you, and then attack the guy. And I'm like, okay, well, this movement has officially run its course, I think.
I guess I'm kind of a masochist because I like to search Black Lives Matter on Twitter sometimes just to see the insane shit these people are saying.
You have to. It's golden. It's comedic gold, and you don't even have to pay for it. Cable couldn't write. Cable cannot write this well. They can't write that well either, but it's still entertaining.
But the insanity is all there. You're just like, this is a real person.
Yeah.
So these people like Antifa and Black Lives Matter and intersectional feminists, they're all basically cultural Marxists.
Yes.
And I mean, we like to point and laugh, like, what idiots they are and the stuff that they do. But are there any valid points that they have, or do they have any valid criticisms of the system that we live in, or what do you think is, I guess, the meat of their presentation?
All right, well, there is an idea of stretching a truth so far that it breaks. Take, for example, the gender myth, the gender wage gap myth. What they say is that women are given less money than men on a general scale, but the real truth is that women earn less on a general scale, having to deal with things like dealing with the family. Just on a national average, the statistics show that women work less, work fewer hours, and they're less probable of getting a promotion because they work fewer hours. They're not working as hard as their male counterpart. And so clearly this is sexism. But to them, that's what they see. To us, we're like, well, they didn't work as hard. And a lot of these women are saying, yeah, I didn't work so hard. I wanted to take a few days off, and it's reasonable. What they do is they'll find a fact and then create a whole narrative behind that fact. And this happened with Black Lives Matter. They'll say, oh, this black kid was hunted down in the streets. And then you find out that he was actually smashing a dude's head in the concrete before the person pulled a gun on him and shot him. And you're like, oh, he was smashing a dude's head on the concrete? I conveniently didn't hear that fact until literally a couple months ago regarding whichever person that was, I forget. I always saw the picture of the young black kid on the news, and I was like, oh, he just like, whoever it was just like jumped out of their car and like an action movie body slammed the guy and said, your end is here, punk, and shot him. That's what the way they portrayed it. And you find out, oh no, that was actually an older picture of the kid from like 5 years previous. And sorry, I'm getting really sidetracked, but
no,
I think
fine.
You know what I think you know what I mean. The media reports the facts completely differently, and that's typically what the cultural Marxists do. And I'm actually, that reminds me of this point that I was going to make earlier, that I do believe the media itself has been completely co-opted by these cultural Marxists. And they might be intelligent enough to pass it off, but it's just so strange how anti-capitalist they seem in a lot of cases.
Yeah, except when they're selling those boxes or something that's like $300 a month or whatever. I remember. I'm not quite sure why I was watching The View, but I was.
It happens
And
sometimes.
um, Whoopi Goldberg was talking about Trayvon of the Blessed Hoodie getting shot to death, and she was talking about the position of George Zimmerman,
Hmm.
who's conveniently white, and no mention of his actual heritage. Beside the point, Trayvon had him mounted, and
Yeah.
well, couldn't he have punched him off? And it's like, lady, I don't know if you've ever been mounted in a fight, but there is no, like, you have no power punching from that position.
Yeah.
None. And everybody's like, yeah, he should have done that. It's like, couldn't she have just hit him with the butt of the gun like before that? It's like, okay, he has no ability to torque from that position, so if anything, the gun could have probably been taken from him, and then he would have been shot himself.
Yes.
And it's just.
And then he gets found. Didn't he? He was found innocent, right? And then now he's labeled as a murderer for the rest of his life. He's never going to be able to get a job anywhere. I think it's just. I just think it's wrong. You know. I mean, the same argument can be made with O.J. Simpson, right? Like, there's no way O.J. Simpson's getting a job at Burger Hut, but.
Yeah, and I think what's awful about the way the media works with these kinds of sensitive cases is that they brand the guy first, and then they go, "Oh well, I mean, he's innocent, but come on, like what?"
Right.
Like, the conclusion, didn't you?
I think it was, and I hate to quote Doctor Who, but I will say that this is from the classic series, from the Tom Baker era, the Fourth Doctor, so it's okay. He said the very powerful and the very ignorant have at least one thing in common. They don't alter their views to fit the facts. They alter the facts to fit their views, which is an interesting thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, just like
facts that needs to be altered.
Anytime that socialism fails, well, I mean, either it wasn't real socialism, it was outside factors, or it was corruption.
It's like a drug. One more time, dude. One more time. We'll just try it one more time. Venezuela. If you've heard about Venezuela, I'd assume it's the opposition party. Like, after this immediate voting and all the crazy stuff that's going on there, now the opposition party was kidnapped by Venezuelan officials in the middle of the night and just carried away like Trotsky.
Yeah,
never to be seen again.
Yeah, I think so. One of two things is going to happen: either Mandela is going to stay in power and just run that country into the ground, and then I mean, at some point, maybe they'll lead a coup and take him out. Or right now, there's going to be a populist movement, probably from the military, and they'll take him out. And then you're going to have another Pinochet or another Fujimori or whoever they had in Argentina, and they're going to send out death squads to kill the old guard, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, it's looking like the first option because, man, and then the police are making their citizens literally eat shit. Like, that's...
I hadn't heard that. Good Lord.
Yeah. This came out back in June or May.
Okay, so maybe I did hear about it, but it was something... I thought this was more recent. All right. No, because I have been silently following the whole Venezuelan thing for a minute. It's been just wild. I didn't think it was going to jump the shark this quick, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, I felt bad for them because they had to eat it, but like then I thought, well, at least they're eating something because most of those people are just starving out there, and it was like shit and sawdust, I think. So.
Oh my God. And they're refusing U.S. aid, by the way, as far as I've heard. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because it's our fault, so.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how, but we did something.
Well, when they were succeeding, it was all about how great Hugo Chavez was, and now that it's failing, it's all our fault somehow. So that's real convenient.
Yeah. Oh God. Like listening to Corbyn or somebody talk about it, it's just.
I'm gonna have to go through social media and check out what all these uber liberals have been saying, because that's gonna be fun.
Yeah. So back on track, I guess.
Yeah. Back on track.
Even though social justice invasions into video games and comic books have utterly failed, Do you think that they are succeeding in changing the culture of these little subcultures, these niches, merely by pushing so hard? Like, do you think there's going to be remnants and vestiges of what they're doing now at some point in the future, or is this just a sign of maybe they're losing steam?
I think they are changing the culture, but not in the way they want to. They are changing the culture of these subcultures, but they're pushing them in the opposite direction. Very much like with Donald Trump this past year, they've pushed a negative so hard that it became a positive. One of Alinsky's rules, actually. I often wonder if this wasn't the intended goal. There has been some reports that the upcoming generation is going to be hyper-conservative, and I believe that the result of anti-Trump propaganda running nonstop on all news outlets is probably to blame for this. Even the least decent human being in the room is watching how they slander the guy constantly and ask themselves, what could he have done to deserve this relentless slander? I don't see child molesters getting this much hate from the media. Come to think of it, there have been over 1,200 arrests regarding underage human trafficking, pedophilia, and production of child porn. More than half of these arrests came from California, which is interesting considering the recent interest in the potential pedophile ring in the entertainment circle. I mean, you don't see CNN, ABC, or MSNBC talking about this at all, and it really makes you start to wonder, you know? This all happened within the last 6 months, by the way. Since January, over 1,200 arrests, by the way. So, to more answer your question specifically, I think in the same way that people have noticed dishonesty in the media, people have also seen dishonesty in the gaming industry as well. And seeing the pushing of all the social justice BS, I think might actually cripple the gaming industry at one point.
Yeah, I think it was Marvel that first felt the striking pain of diversity in their sales. I think the biggest problem with it is that it's inorganic.
Yes.
So when you sell these people who have been, I guess, entrenched, for lack of a better term, but entrenched in these niches for so long that they know what's going on, they know the flavor of the month, and then to have this synthetic movement pushed on them, I think they can just see right through it. But it's much easier with mainstream culture because it just constantly changes. And that's why they've been getting away with it for so long. But if you go into those smaller, deeper fandoms and stuff, they can smell it, you know. I hope I'm making sense here, but
oh no, totally. The more, like, say, the Call of Duty fans, they're not really seeing what's going on, but the people in the indie gaming circle that are like playing games like Binding of Isaac and say like Spelunky, even though those are both pretty old, people who are playing those smaller games aren't really into all of the identity politics, as far as I can say. And maybe that's just a me wishful thinking, so to speak, hoping that the specific niche gaming circles I'm into think like I do. But it seems to me that a lot of people just want to play their games and not have to worry, oh my god, that person doesn't fit this very very obscure standard that I just suddenly came up with out of the blue. So people just want to play something that's fun instead of having to make everything a social issue. And that's why they've alienated the people who, in the gaming circle specifically, because these are people that just want to have fun, and you're taking their fun thing and trying to inject a bunch of not so fun things into it for the sake of BS.
It's like when Sarkeesian first started and she was telling everybody that the online gaming experience was unsafe for women, and it was like full of misogynists and all this stuff. And it was like, have you ever been like online as a girl? Like it's
just like being a queen.
All the guys hitting on you is probably
a lot of girls like. I mean, I don't like to, because it's really a lot of people. Oh man, women like misogyny. No, women like the attention because they aren't treated bad. There's maybe a few bad eggs, but most of the time they see a girl in a game and they're like white knighting them. Hey, let me level you up. Let me give you some cool weapons. Yeah. And it's not even because they secretly think that they're gonna get laid. I think some people say that jokingly, but I think it's more because it's just chivalry on a very low level. But you see a woman, you're like, I want to help her. I want to give her a boost because she's a woman. It's the gentlemanly thing to do.
Yeah, well, I think on really toxic games like League of Legends, it's a guy trying to get laid.
Oh, I'm sure they're definitely. I've seen some very cringy video clips of stuff like that. So it has definitely happened.
Honestly, I live for that shit. I'm just like, yes.
I'm a cringe addict, man. I love it. Speaking of cringe, did you happen to see the? It was a woman on The View, actually. I believe it was The View, and it was about transgenderism, and it's the most insane thing I've ever seen. I'm gonna see if I can find a link to it real quick.
Worse than Bill Nye?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh no!
I heard about it on one of Crowder's episodes. I don't watch him religiously, but I watch him every once in a while, and he was talking about this trans.
I'm not sure if you watch her, but Blonde in The Belly of the Beast, she really loves cringe. I remember for a couple weeks after I talked to her, I would send her links to like really cringy stuff, and she was like, "Oh, I love this shit. Like, just keep sending it." So yeah, if hopefully she hasn't seen this too, you could send it to her. Oh my god.
It's basically a person talking about saying, "Well, I'm bisexual. I'm into men, but not romantically," and it's just a ton of.
Yes, and they're shaming the black chick, right?
Yeah, because she just doesn't understand. She's like, well, wait a minute. So how come you just called yourself a her a second ago, but now it's not okay for me to call you her now? And she goes, well, and then somebody speaks on her behalf, of course, and says, well, that's because that's the only way she knew how to phrase it. Well, then she's the expert on the situation. Don't you think she should know?
I think part of the whole gender queer intergalactic feminism thing is kind of a draw to it is you become the expert on something. Like for once, you're the smartest person in the room because you're the only one that knows what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because when I was first introduced to this feminist newspeak, I was taking a class on Native American literature. This is like 2 years ago, maybe more. And there was this girl in there who was like decently smart, I guess. And she started going on about like cultural appropriation and all this stuff. And like the girl that I sat next to and we looked at each other, we're like, what the fuck is she talking about? And I think even the professor didn't know what she was talking about. And I mean, she sounded like the most intelligent person in the room. And I honestly think that's part of the motivation to do this kind of thing is no matter what, as long as you can keep making things up, you sound like you're Einstein. You're amazing.
Yeah, I'm an expert in my own delusions, so I could talk forever.
Yeah. Oh my god. Oh god, we keep going on these tangents. I'm so sorry.
I am a very tangential person, so like it's probably mostly on me.
It's okay. I guess the two of us just keep going off, and it'll be fine.
I'm one of those guys. I like to say this about myself. I'm a drinking buddy. I'm the type of person you have drinks with and just shoot the shit and make remarks about how bullshit everything is. I'm just one of those kind of dudes.
So am I. I'm a huge IPA fan.
I'm a liquor guy myself.
Oh man, I put down whiskey one time when I pissed like really dark yellow. It almost looked brown, and I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. I do not hydrate.
I've reached my limit. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, so now I'm like, I guess I'll drink beer. So. When I edit this, I will definitely cut that part.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I noticed that a couple weeks back you began to call CNN propagandists, and I think that many on the internet, and including myself, agree with you. But I mean, do you think that this is enough pushback for them to be ready to change or incentivized to change? Or is this just going to be like a kind of a hiccup in their business model?
I think they'll change when the person paying them tells them to change. There isn't a shred of journalistic integrity left at CNN. It's bad at other outlets, but CNN seems to be far worse from the rest. In fact, a medical producer at CNN called Ethics cute, which is about as much as I would expect from a corporation that blackmailed a public citizen, and then less than a month later, one of the employees who participated in said docs would go on to live television to lecture Fox on their obligation to ethics because the president watches their channel. Who appointed them judge, jury, and executioner? Who appointed them as the moral arbiter of ethics? They need to be sacked. That's about, yeah. That's how I feel about them.
Holy crap, that's a lot of fiery rage there. I like that. I think what's great there is the irony in that Obama had completely shunned Fox.
Yeah.
And CNN was the one that he watched. And now that the shoe's on the other foot, they don't really like that too much.
Not at all. Not at all.
And I always hated that, like, you know, edgy mom meme of like, oh, faux news, ho ho ho, like.
Oh man, right? All the Facebook memes, they're the worst.
Like you think your news station isn't biased? Are you crazy? And I mean, I was on the outside looking in on this for a while, but it would always like made me cringe even when I wasn't politically active.
Right. I never thought I'd see a day where CNN, because I did once upon a time think that CNN was better. That's why I feel so unimpressed with them, is because they can be better. Old CNN from the 80s and 90s, yeah, they did have their BS times. Like they had Wayne LaPierre on from the NRA one time, and they tried to like get him in a gotcha moment, and he called them out on like several lies right on the air, and they kept trying to shut him out, and he just called them out right on it. But they were a little bit more clever about it, and it seems like in this past year they just stopped caring entirely. Did you see when they staged a protest following the London attack earlier this year?
The peaceful Muslims that they were trying to, I guess, get in a nice little line or something.
To be charitable, one charitable interpretation is that they were already there, and that the producers and everyone, the film crew, showed up and handed them all a bunch of signs and told them to stand over here so we could film you to better represent you in the media, which is almost plausible. But people who were there, who wrote about this later on, said no, they all showed up together. There's even police officers that weren't even real police officers that were dressed like crisis actors pretty much, that showed up to just be a part of the filming, to make it look like it was a full-fledged thing. And then as soon as the filming was done, everyone was gone within minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very, to me, it's very clear that they're just creating news. Make news by breaking news, right?
Yeah, it's like the hero who breaks shit up just so that they can go and fix it later.
Batman syndrome.
Yeah, I guess so. Damn, I didn't know it actually went that far. Holy crap.
Yeah, and I'm starting to wonder if we're just on the tip of the iceberg regarding how deep this really goes.
Yeah, and I think that's the most worrisome thing, because if you look at an organization like Antifa, I don't think there's a whole lot of condemnation going on about them in mainstream news, especially with that Hollywood cuck who was like, we'll punch some people in the face.
Oh,
it's like,
my God, yeah.
You play a sheriff on a show on Netflix, dude. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, we will punch people in the face when they seek to, I forget, it was a whole thing, because it really angered. I was filled with fire on that one, because I was saying, look, everybody, this is him calling for violence against people who think differently than him. Do you not care about this? And people who are like, well, Stranger Things is a great show. And I said, I have no interest in watching that piece of shit show. I actually heard him specifically. He's really good in the show, from what I hear. And you know what? Hollywood desperately needs actors with talent, so I'm willing to give him credit in that regard. But I just cannot respect somebody who goes to get an award for something and then gets people to jump up and cheer when saying, we're going to go punch a bunch of Nazis. And you know damn good and well that these people wouldn't know a Nazi if they were jumping in front of their face. They just call people Nazis so they can get a free ticket to act like a deranged maniac.
Yeah, and... And then that became their handles. Some of them still have it, but it was like Punch Nazis or Nazi Puncher. And it's just like, oh my God.
If you want to kill a Nazi, play like Wolfenstein, because you're actually killing Nazis. It's pretty relieving. The new
Yeah.
Wolfenstein's pretty great.
And you know, I think what would upset them the most is if Call of Duty did like a pure historical game where they had like the British Legion, the French Legion, the Russian Legion, and the North African Legion, and then like the Turkish Legion, and then a bunch of like different little Middle Eastern legions. And it's like, wait, Nazis aren't brown and black, and it's like, oh yeah, they were, dude. They were even yellow, and it's just like you guys like diversity, except when you have to admit that black, brown, and yellow people were also bad at some point, and now, like, um, I think we can get them to admit that black, brown, and yellow people were bad in the past, and that'll kind of like progress us toward now and make them equal. But and I say that as a brown dude, like, because it's just like you can do no wrong until you're conservative. Then you fucked up.
And that's something.
Yeah. So one of the main purveyors of this type of narrative is Antifa. Do you think there's like a potential danger in not stamping them out?
I personally think it's already out of control. The police should have stepped in a long time ago. The more Antifa goes out and threatens people, burns down trash cans, torches a car, breaks windows of businesses, the more that the silent majority gets angrier and angrier, and really, who could blame them? Antifa is another organization that I think will disappear after enough agitation has occurred to work people up enough to get them to act. I believe that their nature is entirely provocative. Much like I mentioned with cultural Marxism before, the intention of Antifa is similar, I believe. It's to agitate people to the point of acting. The police might come in to put an end to this group, or this group will stir up enough animosity against them that they will be afraid to admit that they are Antifa. But at this point, I believe they will fade away. But the damage they have done to the patience of good Americans, as well as the Trump deranged property damage, will have been done.
I think what the main goal is, honestly, is to finally get a right winger worked up enough, scared enough to discharge their firearm.
Mm-hmm. Well, they want another Timothy McVeigh.
Yeah, because if that happens, then everyone loses their liberties. It's, oh, well, we tried to let you guys solve it peacefully, and now, like, look what happened.
Well, there was that Milo, I think it was a Milo event, and somebody tried to attack him, and he shot him. And the guy lived, it was all okay, but apparently the man shot in self-defense. So that didn't quite fit their narrative, so it quickly fizzled out, and down the memory hole it went.
Yeah, the yellow raincoat, right? Over at, I want to say Washington State, or it was somewhere in Washington. Yeah, I'm just afraid that it's going to be like in the streets or something, and multiple people will be shot, and then it's, oh, look, see, these are the crazy right-wingers we've been talking about. And the right-wingers are going to go like, the guy shot in self-defense, he was scared shitless. And it's going to be like, nope, he's just a maniac. And
that reminds me, sorry, do you want to finish your thought?
Oh, no, that was it.
Oh, okay. No, I was going to, because we were talking about this briefly on Twitter, that man who was surrounded and beaten by a bunch of Antifa people. Let me see if I can bring that back up, because I tried to actually contact the guy. I wanted to talk to him directly. No, he never got back to me. But, yeah, so basically what had happened was that Antifa found out a guy was trying to create a way for conservatives and liberals to talk to one another, considering the growing hostile political climate, and they found him, said that he was essentially giving a platform for bigots and racists, etc. Yeah. And they held him hostage essentially until he ran away, and it seemed like they were going to like do something to him. So he made a very lengthy post on Facebook, and that's pretty much the end of that story. Yeah,
the Montreal ambush, I guess. And I think the post that guy made, it makes me think that he's a pretty hardcore leftist. I don't know, maybe it was too late at night for me to be thinking right, but I think he was already pretty far on the left. But even this won't wake him up. Like he'll just say like, oh, it was just a bunch of thugs. or something, he won't recognize this is a growing problem on his side of the aisle, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You might be right. Although, I'm going to check his profile, because I think I got the impression that he was very anti-Antifa and whatnot. Well, obviously, but I mean anti-crazy... Okay, there it is. What is fascism? Never mind, you were right. there it goes.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to be charitable. I was like, maybe I was just reading too far, but I got the impression that he was one of those, like, oh, it'll take a bullet to get him to go, oh, maybe these guys aren't the ones that I should be allying myself with or aligning myself with.
Yeah.
So he, in the post, he talks about, I absolutely loathe the antics of the reality TV star known as the American president.
The programming goes deep. Because this man was on TV for so many years, they controlled how people saw him. So even for myself, it took at least me for a while before I finally just said, okay, I'm just going to throw away what I know about Trump and just kind of accept him as I see him from here on in. And I haven't been disappointed.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you care to elaborate, like, on your thoughts about him, or?
Yeah, actually, it's conveniently. I actually said that because it was a convenient segue to your next question. Trump is a huge douchebag, but a lovable one if you can brush past the one major obstacle. Who can't love the guy who tweeted out, people can hate on Donald Trump all they want, but in reality, he's flying his jet over your fucking house as you tweet. What a lovable guy. Every time he does something that people hate and says, this is why we hate you, I can't help but go, I don't know, I kind of like the guy. I love his attitude. I love it. When I see Trump, I see a man who loves America and a man who loves Americans. I've seen a lot of footage and pictures that demonstrate this to me, at least, and I feel that this man's heart is in the right place. Chalk it up to intuition, but I can't imagine what else you would want to do with your life after being wealthy the entire time, but trying to make the world better on your way out. Trump is a guy who watches Fox, very likely reads the Drudge Report, and does read Breitbart. He's a new media guy, which is why I began to like him in the first place. I have had a distaste for the media for many years, for as long as I can remember, actually. It seemed clear to me that they are pushing false narratives to suit their own agenda. I remember how proud I was as an American when Trump told Jim Acosta of CNN, I'm not going to let you ask a question. You are fake news. I literally teared up, man. No joke. No one has ever stood up to them like that. Now we realize that we too can stand up to them. We can stand up to these bullies that run the mainstream outlets. By the way, I have to say that more and more people I talk to in my personal life, gas station attendants from places I frequent, tangential coworkers, are becoming less shy of what they have to say. It's incredible how much people are really on the same page despite never talking to one another before the outrages of 2017.
Wow. I mean, I have to really agree with that sentiment. Like, I think he has been a beacon of, I guess, opportunity to finally protest out in the open without fear of being branded.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember before Milo, before Trump, racist, it was like, oh shit.
Better duck away.
Yeah.
Where Breitbart did it best. There's a video out there, and I've recently highly admire this man. That's why I bring him up a lot, because he was on the right track. He's the cipher. He knew how the media ran, and so I study him because I know somewhere I can pick that up and I can use it to my advantage. But there's a video where a man approaches him and talks about him being a racist, and at the end of it he goes, wait, are you calling me a racist or a white supremacist? And man goes, I'm calling you a racist. Yes, I am. He goes, all right, thanks. Can someone get this guy I'm getting so tongue-tied. Can somebody get this guy out of here? And he looks at him and goes, you punk. And his point, he even addressed this later, was that I never even debated me being a racist because it's such an outlandish and ridiculous thing to say that I'm not even going to encourage that delusion.
Yeah. I think that's the right way to go about it.
Absolutely. Instead of going, no, I have a black friend. They'll always, no matter what you say, they're going to say you're racist. But if you just look them dead in the eye and be like, I'm not fucking racist, fuck you. And that's pretty much the only way to go about it. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I both, we grew up in an America where we were told people are a result of their character, their merits, their individualism. I mean, this whole generation, you know, when I was growing up, that was the main point in media, and maybe they were just prepping us for now, but it seemed very clear to me then that we didn't grow up racist. There were hardly ever people that were racist, and you met one in every like 2,000 people, and then you go like, oh, well, that guy's a bit of a dick. Don't go around him if you know any black friends. Just if you have a black friend, just don't bring him around. Just it's not it's not cool. But I live in California, so I couldn't ever, even if I wanted to, I couldn't have exclusively white friends. There's no fucking way. It's so diverse here. I don't even have any one place in my life where there is exclusively any one race. So to me, this whole racist BS is just a way of, it's a witch hunt, and it's not working anymore.
Thank God. So moving on to, I guess, more deviant topics. I recently watched your video on the parents, you know, teaching their children about sex and masturbation. I was mocked and labeled a conspiracy theorist for saying that this level of degeneracy is the mark of a serious decline in a society, and will be the end of our way of life at some point in the future if it continues down this road, which I think it will. Do you believe that there's any validity to this statement? Why or why not?
Somewhat. There does seem to be an attack on the American family. I believe that a lot of the problem black communities, for example, are facing are due to the destruction of the family unit. Fathers aren't usually present in a lot of poorer communities, among other family issues as well. Most of these things are repercussions from the 90s crap. Let me try this again. I need something to drink. I don't have anything to drink. 90s crack epidemic, sparked by USA CIA officials. Look up the Contra scandal for more information on the subject if you're interested, or I'm sure you're already familiar, actually. The problems in black communities are pretty much directly a result of the CIA giving drugs in mass quantities to specifically black communities. And I think that tore down a lot of families, specifically by making potential fathers that could be working an honest living and turning them into drug dealers and lifetime felons. With all of that in mind, I personally think that the political pendulum is moving towards the right. Most people, with the exception of absolutely crazy progressives, see that Teen Vogue article, as I mentioned previously, aimed specifically at preteens as being not only distasteful but gross. There are a lot of people that I have talked to that were as outraged as I was, if not more, after reading that article. I don't think that society will denigrate to that point, but it is possible. Most of this pro-pedo propaganda is a result of progressives attempting to one-up one another.
Yeah, and I think it's very strange to see these liberal publications. I mean, they're really only liberal in name at this point, but these liberal publications pushing for the acceptance of pedophilia. And I mean, just the other day, it was like a children's guide to anal sex.
Yeah, and that was the one I was mentioning.
Like, why would they? What? No, why do you think this is? Is it just like a dick measuring contest for progressives?
Yes,
or like...
that's exactly what I think it is. Because, and here's the thing that makes me wonder, though. That article did not mention any of the bad things that can result after long-term anal sex. There is incontinence for one, higher exposure to infections is another one, and then let's just talk about the obvious, the cleanup aspect. I just think the idea of teaching children to be doing something that is probably best for your 30s and 40s is kind of gross, for one. Mostly because these are people, or these aren't even people yet, these are children that haven't had sex. They shouldn't be having sex yet at all. Being made aware of knowing how to practice safe sex is already difficult enough. Do you really want to hand these people the lube and say, hey, why don't you just go in for the other one as well? Might as well. And the idea that what they say is, oh, well, this is to be accepting of trans and homosexuals and all of that. Well, maybe you ought to give them the tools to possibly experience heterosexual sex first, and then we've been fine for thousands of years. We don't need to start indoctrinating children in a sexual manner now. That's what really makes me wonder, though. I want to say that, no, of course this isn't going on, but then you see that article that, another one too, the toddlers can understand consent. You can teach consent to your children. Why do you need me? Why?
Yeah.
Oh, my brain. I'm blaming this madness on me getting tongue-tied, by the way.
No, it's all good. I think the whole gay pride thing, we should also have a straight pride parade, and it would just be called the your welcome parade, where everybody's like, you're welcome, like I'm keeping the civilization going or something.
Somebody's got to. Goddamn.
Yeah, like the most condescending parade you can have. That way, everybody goes like, okay, maybe parades were like the wrong thing to do, or is this how we sound? Like, yes, it's exactly how you sound. Like, if you want to be considered normal, stop doing things that make you distinguished or distinct apart from everybody else.
Yeah, there's no problem being gay. We all know that. But there is a bit of a problem going out wearing assless chaps, almost butt-ass naked, screaming, "You're fucking oppressing me!"
Yeah.
Come on, man. No one's oppressing shit. You're allowed to be yourself, and you can be less obnoxious. And if being an obnoxious asshole and people telling you you're an obnoxious asshole, but in different ways, if that is being oppressed, well, I hate to tell you, man, I've been oppressed for years.
Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand with the Children's Guide to Anal, because they're like, man, that's a nice ass. I know exactly what to do with that. And so then, your 10-year-old's trying to bang this dude, and you're like, whoa, what's going on with Mustachio over there?
And children are so curious too. So giving them that, it's essentially a dare, for one, and for two, yeah, it is definitely opening their mind up to maybe when somebody makes a move on them to just roll with it instead of running away and trying to get a hold of somebody and be like, hey, this guy tried to diddle me. Instead, they might be like, well, I read that Teen Vogue article teaching me that anal sex is perfectly fine. Maybe I ought to just give it a shot.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to... I forget what it's called, but that idea of, oh, well, you're saying that all gay people are child molesters. Not at all. But it could be used by child molesters in order to further their potential game, so to speak. Sort of like this idea of the trans bathrooms thing. Most people don't care. I don't really care myself. But if you think for a second that somebody couldn't just throw on a dress and some lipstick and then wait in that bathroom and attack somebody, and be much easier to get away that way than on your way out discard it gives an extra option to people who could potentially abuse it. And why can't you just use whatever fucking bathroom you want? I don't give a shit. At the same time, a big hairy dude in a dress with a beard probably should just use a man's room. There are single dads out there with little girls. They don't need to be seeing that. That's a side of humanity you don't need to see to your late 20s.
Yeah, I'm against women being in the men's restroom because of the lines. That's mostly my qualm with it.
Fair enough.
Because men going into the restroom, it'll just be in and out all day long. But
a second.
Start letting women into the men's restroom. Oh my god!
Yeah.
Can you imagine people be taking shits outside in no time?
Seriously though, it'd be India within 2 minutes. I'm not waiting for that chick to finish her text. I'm dropping a deuce right here.
So on a more serious topic, maybe I should have sequenced this better.
It's all right. I like to think it'll be a little bit entertaining for those who are watching.
Yeah. So you have some strong opinions on media matters. Can you give me a little insight or a little bit of your insight onto the I guess the company or the organization?
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and open up the Wikipedia page so I have a bit more to go off of, but from my memory, they they call themselves a media watchdog group. And if you go up on Twitter, you'll notice that they have a particular disdain for conservatives and Republicans. I asked, actually, it's funny, when Ann Coulter tweeted out about her experience on Delta, which probably was a bit unprofessional how she handled it, but not any more unprofessional than how they handled her. Anyway, Media Matters tweeted that out essentially, or one of their it was their president, that's right. And I quote retweeted it and said, why would Media Matters be covering this? And their president tweeted that at me, saying, because she's a right-wing media figure and we're a media watchdog group. And I immediately asked them, yeah, so CNN blackmail happened like 3 days ago. What's your comment on that? Nothing. Apparently they didn't think that a national corporation blackmailing a public citizen was something a media watchdog group should look into. But they did think that shaming Ann Coulter for sending a mean tweet was definitely something they should look into. So the founder of Media Matters is a person named David Brock, who also founded another organization called Share Blue, which some people might be a little bit more familiar with. Media Matters and Share Blue are both ways to use the internet and media to expose right-wing hypocrites and all extremism and all of that, but they're incredibly dishonest, for one, and the second thing is they take massive funding from people like his name is like a boogeyman, but George Soros is in their funding. It's just one of his brainchildren, along with John Podesta and all those other media groups like Center for American Progress, MoveOn.org. They're a bunch of essentially shell dummy groups that allow them to, I don't even know, but gain influence, essentially. It's really complicated, but they claim to be a progressive media watchdog. So
it's like PolitiFact, I guess.
Exactly. They're a more older version of PolitiFact.
Oh God, I remember seeing a picture of the people from PolitiFact. I think it was PolitiFact anyway. It's like, really? It's two people and a cat?
Snopes. You're thinking of Snopes.
Snopes. There we go. Okay. Well, I mean, PolitiFact can rate that one on their scale.
Yeah, they're all the same because they're all incredibly biased. They don't even report truth. They report their truth instead of trying to shine light on their perspective of truth. What they say is, this is the truth and here's how we get to it, as opposed to saying, here are the facts and now let's find our way through the darkness. Even John Podesta, former chief of staff to President Bill Clinton, provided the office space for Media Matters in its formation at the Center for American Progress, which is a Democratic think tank, which Podesta established in 2002. And this thing seems to go pretty deep, especially considering all of the blowback. Well, first of all, people don't really talk about Media Matters, even though they have a lot of influence. They make millions of dollars in donations every year. But, yeah.
So, I just want to pause real quick. William Shatner is a god.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and I just really wanted to say that. Like, this guy has been getting dogged for a long time now, and he just does not give a shit.
Yeah, you've seen the picture, or the Gizmodo article, where they showed a picture of him from Star Trek dressed as a Nazi, and they're like, he's alt-right now. He's alt-right. Get the fuck out of here with that.
Even, like, convinced anyone, like, they all saw Spock right there, and they're like, yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, they were pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. I think they did another Milo, but they're not even being sneaky anymore, and people are just looking at it and being like, shame on you, man. Shame on you.
They're like trying to Photoshop it on there, like, fuck. Well, can you just search William Shatner Nazi in the images thing? And they do, and they're like, oh, well, it's on Star Trek. It's like, that's fine. Nobody's really gonna care.
I'm actually very surprised they didn't crop everyone out, and you just see just him doing a fake Z Kyle.
You know, I've noticed that, like, if you look at articles that are fresh off the line, a lot of the time it looks like an editor hasn't looked at it at all. Mm-hmm. And there's like 20 grammatical mistakes and then like 3 or 4 spelling errors. You're like, this should not have gone through somebody's like.
It's funny. Because when I read that article, I think I said that out loud during the video. I'm like, did anyone actually read through this before they printed it? I can't believe anyone published this, let alone somebody actually thought this bullshit to read it or to write it. It blows my mind. We've reached peak full retard. I don't think we could go any further. And by the way, retard is not an insensitive word. Idiot and moron are the actual hateful terms, and the word retarded was the original politically correct term from like way back when. Huh. And it's gone full circle. Owen Benjamin was one of the people who said that, and I was like, oh, and it turns out that there is some truth to that.
Owen Benjamin's awesome.
He did a great bit recently about the female 007. They're planning on, there's a call to make the next Bond a woman. So he was saying, he had a little song, like she should be called 007, 70 cents on the dollar, things like that. It was really good, but it was just a song about how not funny a woman spy would be if she was Bond. It's not the same. There's a fundamental difference between what makes a man cool and what makes a woman cool. And if you just like put a woman in Bond's clothing and do a movie, it's not going to turn out the same. It just isn't.
Yeah, and I think it was one of my literature classes. Yeah, it was one of my literature classes last year that I took, where they were talking about diversity and all that. And our professor was like, you guys have a real chance to really make it in the entertainment industry because they want to hear your stories and all this stuff. And I was thinking, like, I was born in Charleston, like South Carolina. Like, I don't think my story is exactly going to be what they want from a Hispanic person, because then the next two places I moved were in Washington and in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's going to be one brown dude and then like a sea of white people with some black people sprinkled in there, and then like an Asian every now and again. And they're not going to like that at all, because like I don't really know any Spanish. Like I don't really like any Mexican music or anything like that. So it's not going to be like their Napoleon Dynamite cool cousins thing. Like it's just not going to happen. And I brought this up to him, and he was like, well, I mean, it's the cultural diversity. I was like, well, it seems like cultural and racial are synonymous in this class. And I think it's the same thing with the whole like feminist women empowerment thing. They only like powerful women if they agree with them. Mm-hmm. The same as they only like Mexicans if they're really Mexican, or black people if they're really black. And it's just like,
it's just the result of their tactics over the last few decades. Here's what largely the Democrats have been doing. They've been A, determine oppressed class, B, make yourself champion of oppressed class, and then C, assimilate all members of said oppressed class. And what they do is, once they've said, okay, well, gay people are now ours, we stand for gay rights, we stand for a woman's body, okay, so all of these people, if you are against us, you're against gay people and women, you hate them. And they've constructed their argument based on association, which is why their argument is now just a series of guilty by association. That's all they know.
My favorite, I guess before we end here, my favorite thing that they do is say the black community. Yeah. So it's like, wait, what?
There's a great clip from Real Time with Bill Maher. I've brought him up a few times, but this is actually how I came across Breitbart the first time, where I'm like, this guy's pretty cool. What was it? Can you remind me what you said right before I started going off on this tangent?
Oh, the black community?
Okay, got it. So he mentioned Clarence Thomas, and he says Clarence Thomas is a great example, a great American. He grew up in a poor neighborhood, and he was nominated to be a Supreme Court judge. And Bill Maher said, well, he is not a person who represents black America. And that implies that there is somebody who represents black America. So I would have very clearly gone, well, who is that, Bill? Who does represent black America? And he had Dr. Michael Eric Dyson with him. And Michael Eric Dyson just spit word salad of just a bunch of critical theory nonsense that he didn't even say any complete sentences. Like, it was strange to listen to, but that one phrase that Bill Maher said, where he said Clarence Thomas does not represent Black Americans or the Black community, then who does? Does anyone really represent anybody? Because aren't we all individuals? And isn't racism supposed to be against this idea that everyone of one way is thinking of one? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get to just imagine Dyson going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And oh man. I remember I got into this argument with a feminist one time, and this was in front of the class, and I was like, well, who is the Black community? She's like, well, I mean, the Black community. And I was like, well, who represents them? Like, who speaks for them? And she was like, well, they do. And I was like, who's they? Like, she goes, the Black community. I was like, who exactly is the Black community?
Exactly.
Though?
It's like white people. White people. Who are white people? Oh, well, just like y'all. Well, that's not really, that doesn't say much, because most white people are very diverse ethnically. A lot of white people are like half Native American, half European, partially Hispanic. It's at least the ones I've met. And I myself have a, I'm a mutt. I've always said that I'm a mutt. I look photogenically Native American, but I'm white, you know, and I have no problem saying it. But when people talk about white people, they're not talking about, oh, well, this country called white, where people were citizens of white, their god and emperor or whatever, and when they came to other places, they brought their culture with it. There's no truth to that. They just say, oh, these people that are certain, their skin tone is a little, you know, paler. Yeah, those people. And the problem with that is what a white person is varies from person to person. And hell, Tariq Nasheed thinks that Hispanic Americans are white now too. So it's just, that's the whole thing is the Black community, white people, they're all just a bunch of straw men, scarecrows. They don't really exist. They're just this thing that people hide behind so they can pretend to stand for all these people.
Yeah, I think a lot of them that do that have never been to or even never even like watched a movie from like deep in the heart of Mexico. And it's like, oh man, there's people as black as night, but then there's also girls that are blonde hair and blue eyed with freckles.
Super Irish girls. Like I watched a lot of Alejandro Jodorowsky's movies. What a dude. He's one of my favorite directors. I mean, I don't agree with like his politics necessarily, but man, what an interesting fellow. And I've watched El Topo like thousands of times. And yeah, there's no racial thing to it. There's just people. You know, and I hate this idea of boxing people up into different, oh, this is a black person, this is a white person, oh, this is a husky woman, this is a redhead. It's all just been used to pit people against each other.
Woman of size.
Woman of size.
Bigot.
Indeed.
But I think I've kept you a little long. If you want to end the recording there.
Yeah, this sounds like a good place to end. So I would like to thank everyone for watching, for putting up with us for 68 minutes. That's pretty good. I don't know how far track off I got. I'm a little tipsy, I'll be honest with you, but nice. not unprofessionally. I hope I still came off coherently. I was like, damn it, I'm not getting too fucked up for this, but I definitely wanted to be relaxed. So I do want to say thanks for bearing with me. I did get ahead of myself when I was reading some text a few times. So
it's all good.
And
I want to thank you for joining me. And I mean, when I show the rest of the chapter of this, I hope they gain quite a bit from it. It's been a hell of a conversation. So I guess for everybody watching, have a great day.
Right on. You all have a good one.
Yeah.